It's really important that you look at capabilities before disabilities. So Galt's a mission-driven staffing organization. The majority of our talent pool are talent with disabilities.
What kind of misconception or, I guess, education that's required on your side?
Inclusion is not charity. There's a very strong business value in hiring talent with disabilities.
What is the reason why, with folks that you have placed, that your clients have seen a reduction in attrition?
The talent has been overlooked, undervalued. When somebody does give them an opportunity, they're so loyal that they'll never leave. If there's no seat at the table, bring your own chair.
Welcome to Humans of Staffing. My name is Sehmi with WorkNow. Along with me, I have Mindy, Gulledge from WorkNow as well. Today, our guest is Lisa Doyle from Galt Staffing. Welcome, Lisa, to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And so today, prior to this call, we usually have a warm-up discussion just to get to know your background. What was really interesting, Lisa, was that this is the first time we've had a guest whose talent pool involves a very unique skill set, and I personally have never had an opportunity to understand that there was such a skill set, such a talent pool out there. Could you just, number one, give us your background and kind of go into more what you currently do and what your mission is at Galt Staffing?
Sure. Well, anyways, we're so glad to be here. So what drew me in to Galt was the mission. Honestly, I really wasn't looking for a CEO role at this stage in my career. I actually told the recruiter no 3 or 4 times before I finally said, okay, I'll read the job description. But what I recognized was it's a very rare opportunity when your personal passion intersects with, dare I say, a 4-decade career. And I saw this as a really unique opportunity for me to lean in, mentor, lead, and reach back and pull others up like I've been pulled up through the organization before. And so I didn't really come here for the title. I came because the work matters. And the organizations that I was fortunate enough to work for before, I like to say, gave me a Harvard degree in staffing.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw this as a really great opportunity to apply it to a mission that really matters.
Got it. And could you please kind of elaborate what that mission is and what your primary objectives are currently?
Sure. So Galt's a mission-driven staffing organization. We focus, our talent pool is, the majority of our talent pool are talent with disabilities, and we connect them to full-time and contract roles. We're 25 years old, and up until this year, our sole clients were state and local government entities. So Galt participated in those state use and statewide staffing programs across multiple states.
Lisa, I want to take it back a little bit. And I loved what you said about, you were doing your thing and sidestep for a moment. Thank you for your incredible career in staffing. Your pedigree is tremendous. And I'm very curious, you just said that the recruiter that reached out to you, it was like the 3rd time when you finally, said yes. What went through your mind and what pivoted from no to yes to make the change to Galt?
Oh, that's really an easy answer. It was the mission. So I guess to back it up a little bit, I worked for some blue bloods, right? And so my resume's out there. I worked for Manpower Group for the majority of my career. I spent a little bit of time over COVID at Kelly, and then like any good staffing person, I said, I think HR tech sounds fun. I'll go to Workday. And yeah, it was a lot harder than I thought. And um, I would still be there. Unfortunately, I had some family things I needed to, leave work for a hot minute, um, take care of some aging parent issues. I had reached out to a recruiter that I worked with before, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to be on the market. I'm not yet. Um, I'd like to do a job similar to what I did 10 years ago.
Sure.
Something I could do with my eyes shut. I'm at a point in my career now that, I'm not chasing anything. I just want to sail into, the sunset." Of course, as all things happen, before I was ready to go back, she's like, "I have this opportunity." And I said, "Not ready." And, well, she was looking for what we both described as a needle in a haystack, somebody with a very strong background in staffing and somebody with a personal tie to the mission here at Galt. And this recruiter we had a relationship for many years, and she knew I have an adult son with Down syndrome. And so she said, "I just can't see anybody that's, tied more closely or, has such lived experience." And I said, "I'm just really not looking for a CEO role right now. I appreciate it." But then another week later, I said, "Okay, fine. I'll look at it." And I called an old mentor that I kept in contact with and said, "Hey, will you look at this with me?" And he said he got my email when he was at a hockey game with his son. So he couldn't really read it clearly. But he said, call me tomorrow at 9. Let's chat through it." And so right before we jump on the call, he looked at it, didn't read my email. He just looked at the job description. And so I teed it up when we got on the call, and he said, "Stop. I thought you wrote this as your ideal role, what you were looking for. I didn't think that it was a job or opening that it was sent to you. What are you thinking about?" And so that really just, we talked back and forth, and the size, the opportunity, but it was the mission. It's important work. It's great work. And I can think of no better way to ride into that said sunset than what I'm doing today.
Well, kudos to that recruiter for really pressing and understanding what the key candidate profile looked like in you. And, that's tremendous that you have a mentor that, was that in tuned and, almost could see you in the role in the future. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
I think mentors are so important. That's
Oh,
why
yes.
it's very important that I do the same thing, right? Because, it's way back when I, was at Manpower Group and I first started into that strategic sales role, they see the same thing, right? They assign you a mentor, and that my mentor changed from, as the company changed, as the market changed. And I just think that it's so important to have them, because oftentimes you can't see the forest through the trees, and
Right.
those mentors are really good at, whacking some things out of the way for you.
Very good. Very good. TJ, I wanted to also ask her just a moment ago, we were talking about the mission and Galt, and you said something is so interesting, and I wrote it down that the new phrase of skills-based recruiting, I wrote it down that to you, it's like you're so last Tuesday, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear kind of your spin on that, or kind of your take on that, I should say.
Sure. We all knew that's the talk of the town, right? Any shop, any conference, every other article on LinkedIn, our peers are all talking about skills-based hiring. Whether any companies are doing it well or not is probably up for debate, but you give it a good old college try. And while we have a long way to go and a lot to learn here at Galt, we all internally kind of laugh and say, we've been doing this skills-based, leading with skills and capabilities for 25 years. It's like, so glad you're going to get on the bus, because we'll have louder voice. Together, we're so much stronger. But the skills-based hiring organizations, or just that whole trend, will do nothing but benefit individuals with disabilities, because oftentimes traditional TA systems whether they're tech enabled or old fashioned. Oftentimes, disabled talent is screened out very, very early before capabilities are even talked about. Gaps of employment on their resume is a big reason why many of them are disqualified before they even get in the race.
TJ, I monopolized her. You go ahead.
No worries. We'll take
okay.
turns, Mindy. We'll take turns. What I would be interested to know is on a client perspective, what kind of misconception or I guess education that's required on your side about the talent pool you have when you go do position your talent pool? What are some of the common misconception that's out there? And then you have to educate the client that, no, it's this way. Is that kind of a challenge you face when you're out there, especially now in the private sector?
Every day. Yeah. Misconceptions, unconscious bias, you can you call it what you want, but we're all human. And I think our default is to what we know, right? The one message that I hope whoever listens to this gets is, inclusion is not charity. It's not. It's there's a very strong business value in hiring talent with disabilities. An example I can give you is, somebody who has mobility challenges, right? That perhaps either walks with assisted, a cane or a brace or a walker or even a wheelchair. That person have very high degree of adaptability and innovation and grit. And I just read an article yesterday from LinkedIn, the top 12 skills in demand. And all of those are listed, right? But this talent is living and thriving in a world that was not built for them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're looking for innovation on your team, if you're looking for different perspectives, 1 in 4 people, I don't know if it is common knowledge, 1 in 4 people have a disability. So the next time you're in a meeting with, 20 people, 5 of those people have a disability. And that's a large number. But you know what else it is? It's a large consumer base. And those consumers want to see themselves in your organization. So, there's a lot of business value. And there's so many studies that have been done by McKinsey and Deloitte and EY. And a new one was put out not too long ago, even by JP Morgan Chase, that, all the value, business value that comes from an inclusive workforce is crazy. I won't bore you with statistics, but, is really important that you look at capabilities before disabilities.
Is there a definition for disability? Like how does one determine that? just curious to know.
I was thinking that as well. So yeah.
So for us, when you think about an individual with a disability, for us, it's it falls within the ADA description of having a disability. Again, our private sector business is brand new, so a lot of what I reference will be from what our historical business, right, our legacy business. But in those state programs, they do require physician certification. So we just base everything around ADA. So there's no question, I'm sure there are other organizations that maybe don't follow it as strict as us, but that's how we do it. Disclosure is a big issue, for many, most of our talent pool. There's a trust issue, right? They're afraid to disclose because they feel like they'll be the first on the chopping block. But part of our process, very intentional part of our intake and onboarding, and then associate management process is establishing that trust. So they do feel comfortable in disclosing, because when they disclosed, then we can help make sure that all the appropriate supports are in place so that they're successful and the customer's needs are met.
Very good. Very good. So I see you are back to all about you. You are a mother of 5. Am I seeing that correctly?
Mhm. Mm.
And you're a dog mom. So I got to hear about that.
Okay, so um, I have 5 kids that are 1 and 5 are 18 years apart. They're the girls and 3 boys in between.
Oh, wow.
And then I have 5 Shih Tzus. I'm gonna 5 must be my number.
Oh, my goodness.
Mhm.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
yes, my number 4 is has my 5 Shih Tzus out of here for this
For that.
interview. I said the worst thing that could happen is if the dogs just go off in the middle of this recording, but they can edit it out if necessary. So yeah, so they're light of my life, and that's my personal tie. So number 4, I mentioned before, his name's Nick. He has Down syndrome, and he's 30. He'll be 38. So we have a very long lived experience of challenges and obstacles in disability employment. So, I guess I've been preparing for this role my whole life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Very good. Thank you for sharing on that. And yeah, we all have to prepare for our four-legged family members to come and disrupt everything that we do. So
Yeah.
yeah, I have a mini
One of the
Bernedoodle.
benefits of
Wow.
COVID, right?
Wow.
It got us
That's
all
true.
comfortable being uncomfortable. The dogs bark, the baby cries.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
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 right.
one of the benefits that came out of COVID.
Right. Exactly. And a barista in the background at Starbucks when you're working at Starbucks.
Exactly.
So
You
I'd
know,
love
no,
to go ahead,
well,
Sam, TJ.
no, it's so Lisa, I'll ask a little bit more. Being on the tech front and product front, I'll ask a little bit more of a tricky question. You know, I've been building systems for 30 years, right? These applications, user interfaces. I'm just curious now that you're sourcing for this talent pool. What is the user experience like for them when they do use onboarding applications or systems? Do you find those systems adequate? I mean, there's a lot of what we do that is ADA compliant, right? In terms of the colors, maybe just the way the layout. What is your experience so far? I know you just joined recently, but what system are you using? Do you see any challenges there to onboard talent like that who using current systems?
Not so far. So in during COVID, our organization went fully remote. So my entire team were all fully remote. Rarely do we get face to face with our talent. Everything's done through technology. And thus far, we haven't had any, issues, let's say systemically. There may have been an isolated issue where we needed to get face to face and we just, meet them where they are. We use Bullhorn. We're on Bullhorn 1. And I guess the good and bad for my career prior to Galt, I never really was in the systems, rarely at all, even though everywhere I worked had Bullhorn, except Workday. But we have developed our process to meet people where they are, but it's flexible enough that if there are issues that we're able to help. This year started introducing AI. Now we're not the firm that's going to go chase the shiny and jump into the deep end of AI. I very much support technology and see how all the benefits it can bring for things being more efficient, more effective. However, I also think without the appropriate human guardrails, that it can accelerate bias. It can accelerate it if we're not very careful. And so that's just something that we're being very intentional about as we employ AI into our process. And it is today very minor parts of it, but very much so. So we're just work with consultants to come in and help us make sure that we stay very, very disability friendly and use technology where it can benefit both the associate and the end user client and Galt.
Interesting.
Got it. Thank you. Go ahead, Mindy.
So do you currently operate nationally? I see you're in 3 states. Can you walk us through kind of, your footprint?
So we are structured to work nationally. We are not national. We are multi-states.
Okay.
So, however, with the launch of our private sector business, overnight we're national. We can be wherever our clients are. Maybe that's a good segue into, our sourcing model, which I know you both, asked about earlier. So, our primary recruiting and sourcing model is you won't go to our website and find hundreds or thousands of job openings. You won't go to Indeed or any other website and see hundreds or thousands of job postings. We will attract the non-disabled talent. So I like to say we're discerning fishermen, right? And if you are a bass fisherman, you are going to go to a bass pond and fish. Now, are you going to pull out a bass every single time? Probably not, but a really high likelihood of pulling out a bass. We do the same thing when recruiting. We recruit from community partners where there is a high concentration of individuals with disability, primarily those organizations that have a structured training program or services program for people with disabilities. We will go to veterans groups where there's a high concentration of people with disabilities and places like that. So we'll go to them and create, a virtual path from their organization as they're ready to graduate. We'll go in and mentor, we'll help with making resumes, we'll help with, doing some mock interview practice, whatever they need and can find value in, we'll provide that. The other part of our process is we provide, in addition to skills validation, we also provide psychological assessment. And it measures, it's called IRIS, formerly it used to be called something else, but the IRIS assessment. And it measures about 100 different attributes, things that clients are looking for, things like grit and self-confidence or self-blame, and provide one-on-one coaching prior to placement. Where are you? Where do you aspire to be? Where's that gap? What are some strategies we can put in place to narrow that gap? Perhaps it's very easy, perhaps it's very long-term. And upon placement, that coaching continues. And furthermore, it expands to include a hiring manager. Oftentimes we're finding, especially in the private sector, hiring managers may not have had an inclusive team. They might have not had anybody that had a disability on their team. And again, unconscious biases, but they exist. And so, perhaps we place somebody that's on the spectrum and they are showing up with, poor eye contact. Maybe they don't talk to anybody. And this hiring manager, they don't know what their disability is, right? We don't disclose that. But they're going, they're just really not engaged. They're just not connected. I don't think it's going to work out. We're just going to end that assignment. And we're able to get ahead of that and maybe have these conversations that might not otherwise had taken place without this coaching. So the hiring manager gives me that feedback. I will take it back to our candidate and say, so, I've got some feedback for you that we need to work on. And I know you're not comfortable, but they brought you into the team meetings. Let's just pick one thing and get you comfortable. And the next meeting, you're going to contribute this one thing. And we practice it. They go into the meeting, they contribute, hiring manager lights up, employee lights up. They both like the way this feels. And I want to do it again. This person starts contributing more. What we're finding is by the end of these assignments, the hiring manager is their biggest advocate. If they don't have a role in their team, they are running the halls trying to find these people places at their company.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good.
Really in it for the retention, for the long term. It's it's a really refreshing and fun way to operate is knowing that we're mission first so that we can have that extra high touch, hands on. It's about making that match and making it sticky. So we start with that end in the beginning and start, build our processes to include all of that.
Very good. How much value has social media brought to awareness of your organization with the individual looking for employment and vice versa?
You'd be surprised how successful recruiting we are on LinkedIn. There's a big disability community on LinkedIn. So when I think of social media, that above all of the others, while we're on all the other platforms, LinkedIn is by far the most valuable to us.
Standing.
I think, if I'm being honest, when I entered the firm, I didn't think LinkedIn was going to be a big recruiting tool for us. And I was very pleasantly surprised. Maybe it might have been a little under leveraged previously, but yeah, we're in a full court press now, and it's really proving to be very helpful. A lot of disability communities on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I'm like, if I'm someone with disability, I it's challenging for me to go directly to a client, to an employer, with maybe lack of education on the employer side. As you mentioned, there are biases, inherent biases everyone has. Whereas the service you guys are providing, I think is so phenomenal because if I am able to talk to somebody who understands my situation, trains me, educates me, and then more importantly, finds a role that suits my, because this is traditional recruiting we've all done for years, right? Hey, what's your skill? Do this, this department, this position, this is your pay rate, let's go. But here's way beyond that, right? Because as you mentioned, it could be, paying attention in those meetings, or maybe, I don't know, it could be any one of those factors. So do you get this type of feedback from the talent pool that you guys are probably investing in? Maybe your recruiters are being trained on this. Maybe, like as you mentioned, I think the stats you gave was 60, is it 63% or something, if your internal staff itself has disabilities? Was that the correct number here?
My team, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So your team, so they are probably in the best position to really understand what someone is going through, right? And then educating them, training them. Now, all this, frankly, is a cost to the business, right? I mean, if you look at it on your side as well, there is cost involved in education, there's cost involved in training, there's a cost involved. And then you're reaching out to a client. And so when you do focus on a client, with these are temporary positions, are there certain type of, are these mid-level type of positions that you target, a little bit more senior because of the investment that's gone into the talent pool to even get them to that point?
So make sure I understand. You mean who we're targeting within our clients to have the conversation with?
Yeah. So but let me give you an example. So we deal a lot with light industrial labor, right? Light industrial, frank, even there's hardly any interviews being face to face conducted, right? You fill out a form. If you can lift 50 pounds, you can do this, you can do that. It's rapid onboarding. It's rapid placement. It's rapid work. It's warehouse, distribution, manufacturing, light industrial type of work, right? So the investment on a staffing agency side in terms of education, in terms of training, yes, you might have safety training for a specific client. You might do, and hence you target those type of positions as a staffing agency. You target those type of positions that fit right in. Are you also targeting certain types of position that fit that mold because there is this level of education required? There's this level of investment required, uh, versus, and let's, and I mean, at the end of the day, it's a for-profit organization in terms of you're targeting a private sector. You've got to keep your certain markups. How are you balancing that part? Is what Access Plus get.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about Galt. We're mission driven, right? So we are a nonprofit, right? That doesn't mean that our service arms operate, in that manner. Our service arms, our private sector and public sector business, fund our foundation. So we have a little saying internally: no money, no mission. So we definitely make money. But the beautiful thing is, I've not had one meeting with my board, be it in our board meetings or one-on-one, where money was the first topic. It probably wasn't even the second topic. It's all about the mission, right? And making sure that we are, our talent pool is counting on us. And so when we make that connection, that is first and foremost. And so if it's a 30% gross profit or a 3% gross profit, it's not a major thing anybody's measured here, right? Are we making money so that we can reinvest and expand the mission and help more people? So I've found we've gotten a lot of traction with talking to, I'll call them majority staffing firms. I used to call them commercial staffing firms, but some people correct me on that and they go, "Oh no, that's blue collar and we only do IT." Okay, well, without naming them, the big majority staffing firms, I had a role at one of them, and I was a global lead for a big client that had very, very aggressive inclusion SLAs in our contract. I had very, very aggressive financial metrics I needed to make, and the two of them typically don't marry very well, right? And so I would have killed to know a Galt. I
Yeah.
would have killed to have a Galt in my back pocket 20 years ago when I was getting my butt kicked at our quarterly business reviews. You're both shaking your head. Yes, you know exactly what I'm talking about. To say, I have something very innovative to bring you. And guess what? We've been experiencing, 20% increase in our churn in the customer experience center. And I've got a solution for you. I've got a partner here who has, a talent pool that has demonstrated 4 times better retention than anything we've been able to do. And oh, by the way, they're an inclusive staffing firm. Those conversations today are starting to, pick up momentum and partnering with, many of them were former colleagues, right? Because when you're in this business, your colleagues are at another, they might be wearing a different jersey, but it's a very familial business. Once you're in it, I don't know what it is about it. We're just kind of stuck here.
You try and get out, it pulls you back in. We were talking
Yes.
about our meeting just today.
Mhm.
So
And
talk a little bit about, proof is in the pudding. Your folks that you have placed in businesses, across the country, multiple states, as we say. What is the reason why, with folks that you have placed, that your clients have seen a reduction in attrition? Like, what is it about, your service that has kind of led to that metric, if we want to call that?
I would really, really like to take all the credit for it, but it's in the talent, right? The talent has been overlooked, undervalued, undertapped. I'm not saying untapped, but undertapped. And when somebody does give them an opportunity, they're so loyal that they'll never leave. They won't leave because you gave them a shot when no one else would.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have the stat, but I have the feedback from the clients on the impact, the immeasurable impact on the morale, that by adding this talent to their team, how much morale has increased, how much innovation has increased. It has a positive impact. It's like throwing that pebble in the pond, and it just ripples out into the organization and permeates in. I have a story on that. So my son, who is a very accomplished young career person, he is currently, and like I said earlier, he has Down syndrome. So he is currently the national sales director for the organization he works for, and they're a for-profit organization that teaches people. They started the first 5 years. They taught people with disabilities improv, both in person and online. And anybody that's been in sales or even leadership knows someone that has studied improv. It's fantastic. Well, the tenets of improv are why, and it's because, it teaches things like self-confidence, eye contact. He also is teaching online. So he teaches classes online and in person, and he's a national keynote speaker. So a very accomplished young man. For 11 years, he worked at a grocery store. 11 years. Okay. And he had a manager who I said while he was working there, and I'll say until I die, could write a manual on how to run an inclusive workforce. He was amazing. And so Nick's doing the typical, bagging and stocking shelves and doing some light maintenance. And Lenny just took to him. And he had the floral department manager had to short notice go out on medical leave. So he said, "Hey, Nick, what if I have you sit in for her while she's out? You make sure you take care of the flowers, you make sure everything's watered and neat, and you can even come to the team lead meetings." He lit up like a Christmas tree.
Yes.
He took such pride in what he was doing. It was immaculate. Everything was always stocked. The customers were happy. The other team leaders that ran all the other departments, is not a small grocery store, it's gigantic. He started taking such pride in how their store was measuring up to others in the region, and he'd rally everybody around how important it was. And where prior to him getting involved, they weren't real excited about hearing the numbers, when they were reporting out the numbers in the beginning of the meeting, but they started it was contagious. He became their ambassador. So give people tours. He represented them at community events. And then that manager retired. New manager comes in. And he's like, I don't have time for this. You can just go back to bagging. And, Nick was deflated. And so I said, well, apply for another role in the store. They kept telling him no. He said, I want to apply for this department or that department. They kept telling him no. And what do you think happened in Nick's performance? It started to go down, right? His 10-minute breaks turned into 15. He would go take his break and then, walk the aisles and help customers and do all the things that he was doing well. And so they called his job coach in. And I wouldn't have believed it had the job coach not told me this story. And so they're like, we're very concerned about your performance. And, it was all one-sided. And at the end, they said, do you have anything to say, Nick? And he said, well, yes, I do. And he reached in his pocket and he pulled out his resignation. And he says, I'd like to give you my notice. No job, no nothing. It's the difference between same company, same store, same job, same Nick. Somebody saw capabilities. Somebody saw disability. So, that's all the difference. And, as part of his keynote, and it's something I live by. I've got a sticker right here on my desk. If there's no seat at the table, bring your own chair.
I love that. That's a great story. Wow.
And it's real world, right? I mean, it's real world. Wow. At the point you brought up, Lisa, that I wasn't aware of that any one of us at any point in time could be disabled, right? And I was like, wow, I didn't even think through that part, right? But do you any stories there, or do you see that a part of the talent pool as well, or?
Oh, 100%. I have a story of somebody who, at 30 years of age was diagnosed with MS. And, she had a sickness And what I learned about MS was that you can be born with the plaque on your brain and you could die with it there and never have been impacted by it. But sometimes a sickness or a virus or a fall can activate that plaque. And that's when you get diagnosed with the disease. So this person, had a virus that attacked her brain and it activated her MS plaque. She's got 2 advanced degrees. She's, got her undergrad. She retired from post-secondary. She was an administrator at a university. And I don't think when people think of disabled talent that they go right to, oh, wow, the administrator of,
A
University of Akron
Yeah.
has a disability. But you guys, it happens every day. Somebody can become disabled. And it can be it could be as they're starting their career. It can be as they're closing out their career, in the middle of their career. It can happen anytime. And, it's one challenge I would have if there's a hiring manager that watches this, build your process to be inclusive from the beginning, because you never know who it's going to benefit. Curb cuts are a great example of something that was designed for someone with a disability, but it benefits everybody. It benefits the delivery drivers. It benefits the dog walking moms, the stroller pushers. Like it benefits everybody. And so with your hiring systems, design them the same way.
So, Lisa, how would someone reach you? I mean, if someone is in a position where they're looking for a job, they're looking for direction, is it the best way? What's the best way to reach out to you or your organization? What's the best way?
Yeah, the best way would, go to our website. We have a link where they can access there. But we're very accessible. I get DMs on LinkedIn all the time from talent that says, "Thank you for speaking up for us." And I've been looking for a role for so long, an HR manager, role, and I can't get past the starting gate, and so I'll take them that way. But we're not really, we're pretty accessible. No pun intended.
That's awesome. Mindy, anything before?
Yeah, I was thinking back to just when we got on our conversation about technology and something you were sharing, Lisa, in the world of AI that we are, very much have found ourselves as a part of our lives, and it's growing, evolving. There's fears that are justified, fears that aren't, paranoia that's real and not. And in my experience and kind of use of AI, I have found statistics where actually bias has been reduced versus being more of at risk when it comes to engaging with AI, because AI isn't biased. It is straightforward. It doesn't have those human like inclinations, I guess, for lack of better words. I'm just kind of curious if you've experienced something completely different, or it's just more of a mitigate the risk if that could happen.
I personally haven't experienced one way or the other, but in my, education and reading up some of the lawsuits that are out there, I think it's in how your systems are built.
Yeah.
And so if the systems are built with some bias in it, having AI, having technology, it has a propensity to accelerate that bias. So like I said, we embrace AI, any technology. We just want to make sure that there are human guardrails, that, they're audited.
Right.
I would challenge anybody, to go and look at their onboarding systems and their processes and audit them with fresh eyes, with completely unbiased eyes. There's a lot of consultants out there that'll do accessibility audits and, see if there are any blind spots. I don't think anybody's intentionally doing it. I just
Yeah,
think
I
that
don't think I
it's
don't think so either. Yeah.
Mhm.
So what we've discovered with AI is number one, on the legal aspect, each state has its own set of rules in terms of biases, right? Uh, and usually the biases in AI come in with the training models that you're using, the training data that you use to train that model. That's where the inherent biases come in, actually. So where things are today doesn't mean they'll be there tomorrow, but today, the phrase is human in a loop, human in a loop. And that's exactly what it is. Yes, the AI will go and get, match the skill sets and determine all these forecasting and these fancy numbers for you. But at the end of the day, you need a human being to come in and stop and say, hey, let me just validate what the AI just did. Uh, and make sure, now, no doubt the human has a bias in himself too. But
No doubt.
when you have biases from a training model that's 10x exponential, then that bias over time just gets larger and larger and larger. And so there's actually a number of laws out there, and that's where the complexity comes in, frankly, for AI, is you have your federal level and then you've got your state level laws that are coming in and saying, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. So or at least our experience has been, is that biases do exist in AI. And in fact, most states now, as a software vendor, if you're using AI to do any sort of not matching, but actually placing of an individual, like no human was involved in a decision. The AI went out, looked at you, made the decision, you're the right person, actually placed you. You should have an entire documentation that laid out the what principles or design principles did you follow for that AI to make that decision. And I think that's a gray area, and I think it's one of those areas that, frankly, even on our side, we don't touch, because I do feel it doesn't matter whether you're using ChatGPT or Claude, or all these are nothing more than training models out there that are grabbing data from somewhere with inherent bias, and you're just cracking it out. So but we see the value, but in certain areas, those guardrails are really, really important. And I think that's where the industry is at, where security and data governance is should be taking a number one priority, but it's not. It's I think it's a wild west right now, and you just have to take two steps back as an organization and really assess that, yes, it's adding value in maybe task one, but task two, it actually exposes me to more risks than I would like it to be. And that's really where we're at on the AI front. That's at least, our experience on that side. So.
Yeah, a lot of, I'm asked, what's your AI strategy? And I don't have an AI strategy. I have a business strategy, and I will
Right.
tell you where AI fits into it.
Right. And that's how it should be. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, but Lisa, thank you so much. That was so educational, frankly, on a personal level.
Thank you.
Kudos to you and the work you're doing, and your
Thanks.
organization as well. And I really hope that whoever watches this, gets inspired by your journey and what you guys are doing on your mission. So.
I do too. If I could say, whoever's watching it, right? Maybe just issue a challenge, pick one role that you hire for regularly, audit your process for barriers, and then look at the job description. Look at how the managers interview and onboard. And this part probably matters most. Audit it with new eyes and inclusive eyes. And then commit to one intentional hire, just one, with a manager that is ready, and watch what happens. Just one. Because inclusion will become real when it's repeatable.
Mhm.
But you have to start with one.